Today, I have the privilege of joining some of my World Trade Center colleagues to discuss leadership and navigating during turbulent times. I know that there are many World Trade Centers who are here with us in the audience. And on behalf of Denise and the panelists, I want to thank you each for your support and collaboration. I believe that today is an example of how World Trade Centers collaborate and support one another. Throughout our global ecosystem, we have experts in all professional disciplines. Together, we provide reciprocal services to enable our members to gain a competitive international advantage. There are more than 300 World Trade Centers in almost 100 countries around the globe. The network is dynamic and powerful. The speakers here today represent female World Trade Center leaders from 4 countries. While our World Trade Center regions are different, we are all united in our purpose to support trade. At the World Trade Center Dublin, it is our business to help companies launch into new markets. The pandemic didn't change this for us, and my colleagues here today feel the same way. We continue to provide superior services to our clients on a daily basis, despite what was happening in the world, and help them to generate new sales. Now I would like to introduce you to my co-host, Denise Thomas, Trade Director at the World Trade Center Arkansas. I have worked with Denise for many years, and I can tell you firsthand that she's strategic, creative, courageous, and a whole lot of fun. So Denise, I'm going to hand it over to you now to introduce our panelists. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having us all here today. It's really a very robust conversation. I'm looking forward to it. But I want to start off, kick off the session first with a poll. And the poll really is something that I think would be near and dear to all of us during working from home during COVID. So if you could bring one thing from your office to your home office, what would it be? And I'm going to cheat and take liberties to tell you what mine would be. Mine would be yoga pants at my desk. That would be my choice. So let's see what the poll says. So I would like for all of you guys to participate and be interactive with us so we can get into the chat and we can look at the poll. So I want to make sure you all submit and hear from you. So we've got coffee machine, whoops, water, we've already got results. Okay, my colleague. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So thank you for participating in the poll. I want to go ahead and introduce our guest, our panelists to you. First, we have Mariette Mueller with World Trade Center Winnipeg. And if I say the names wrong, you guys please correct me because I did practice. Jesse Jenkins with World Trade Center Savannah. Christina Sabazzaro with World Trade Center Trieste. Carla Stone with World Trade Center Delaware. And we will open the first question up with handing it back to Maureen.
Thanks so much, Denise. Interesting response to that poll, to my entire desk setup. I like that. I need my standing desk is what I need. Anyway, our first question is going to go to Christina. Christina, what is the most significant change in international business and trade in your region since the pandemic?
Thank you. Hello from Italy to everyone, and thank you, Denise and Maureen, for having invited me to represent a fearless woman leader. So you have to know that Trieste is a port city. Trieste is the leading port in Italy for total tonnage, with 62 million tons moved, with rail traffic of 10,000 trains and 210,000 trucks taken off the road at the end of 2019. So before COVID, the port traffic in 2019 achieved an historical record for containers, plus 9%. At that time, these numbers double the numbers of 2014. So in the last 5 years, the port was growing tremendously. Being such a relevant hub, Trieste, it means that our economy rely a lot on international business, commerce, and trade. Trieste is a lively, cosmopolitan, and culturally rich city. It's strategically positioned as gateway to Central and Eastern Europe. So it's located in the middle of a multinational area with a combined population of over 5 million. Living in a region in Italy, which is bordering with the two countries, Austria and Slovenia, having such a dynamic port activity, as you can imagine, the pandemic and its consequences have impacted. The lockdown of many activities and the closing of the borders from one day to the other impose new strategies and new approaches to avoid to block the development process. I just give you two examples of changes which became challenges for us since the pandemic. By presenting a massive renovation project of the city waterfront, of the port and its logistic infrastructures at national and European level, it was possible to attract significant financial supports from the central government that has been combined with foreign investments. So the city is not silent or just resilient, but it's under an intensive process of daily change. You wake up in the morning and you realize that a new portion of the old harbor area has been renovated and included in the city, or a new project has been approved to connect the industrial area with the logistics service to speed up the multimodal traffic from sea cargo to inland railways. It's an exciting time, really. Another example in the private sector was the change of strategy from one of our members, a local ham producer, which was looking to find a distributor in Winnipeg before COVID time. As the restrictions increased together with customs and duties to export in North America, the company decided not to lose the opportunity to expand, but to change its approach. Instead of looking for a distributor now, thanks to the support of WTC Winnipeg team represented by Mariette Muller here, we have identified together a Canadian ham producer to introduce the Italian ham producer for an exchange of know-how, recipe, certifications, and brand name. The so-called joint venture solution will be producing in Canada the Triestino ham under guidance of our collaborative support.
That's great, Christina. Thank you so much. And, you know, I've had the pleasure of being a part of the World Trade Centers Association for a long time. And as part of that have been to Trieste, and it is certainly a very beautiful part of the world and with an incredibly impressive port. Can you tell us a little bit more, Christina, about yourself and, you know, how you got started with the World Trade Centers Association?
Of course, in my position as a CEO of World Trade Center Trieste, I'm responsible for directing international trade-related services and managing the facility. The building is located in the heart of the historical city of Trieste, just a few steps away from the main square, Piazza Unità d'Italia, which you see on my back. And the license is held by the company Summer & Co. Shipping, operating in logistics sector since 100 years. We offer spaces and professional support to tenants and members of the city and the region, Friuli, Venezia, Giulia, for the internationalization processes, and reciprocally, we welcome and support members of the other WTCs interested in establishing partnerships with local entrepreneurs. I received a professional education to become a chartered accountant and certified accountant. Therefore, in addition to the work at the World Trade Center, I am member of the board of statutory auditors of the major companies in Trieste, public entities and business organizations. And that position gives me the opportunity of a very deep view of the developments and potentialities of the economy, covering different sectors from financial to cultural, logistics. As you mentioned, I started working for the WTC network over 20 years ago. And at the very beginning, there were only few powerful women. I remember that I was naturally looking for a mentor, for an inspiring person in the network, and possibly an iconic businesswoman. And I found a great source of ideas, strengths, commitment, and persuasion in Charlotte Gallagher, president of World Trade Center Miami. She's a great, fearless woman. She has the ability to lead and play the change. And I would like to mention her because she opened the doors of the WTCA board of directors to many other women. She has received numerous business awards, and she has also instituted the Women Executive, the celebration of the United Nations International Women's Day Initiative, which has honored 87 women executives in international trade over the past 16 years. So having people like Charlotte as colleagues of the network, when there is a trouble, you don't feel scared, but you feel that you have a real opportunity to count on open-minded, passionate innovators, well-connected experts in international trade, covering almost the world, linked with local companies and institutions, able to transform trouble into a triumph. And if you are already a member of your local World Trade Center, you know how easy it is to pick up the phone or send an email and get an immediate support to your request.
That's great, Christina. Thank you so much. And I share your appreciation for Charlotte and all she has taught many of the women, I'm sure, on this panel, over the years. I'm going to jump now from Italy and go to Canada. Mariette, love to hear about the World Trade Center Winnipeg and a little bit about your background.
Well, thank you. And Denise, you said my name perfectly. Because I am what we call a French Canadian. So I live in Winnipeg, which is right in the center of Canada. So it's not even close to Toronto or Vancouver. It's places you might know. We're 2,000 kilometers away from Montreal. So just to give you a sense that we're really right in the middle of this big country. I've been with the World Trade Center since its beginnings. We bought the license in 2012. And you're right, Christina, about Charlotte being a powerhouse. She was part of the whole process for us when we got into the World Trade Center. Today, so I've been involved a lot in the local community boards, and I think that was really what helped me get a better understanding of the business community in Manitoba and around. Oh, Winnipeg is in the province of Manitoba, just to precise this. So when I speak about Manitoba, it's the province. So now today, I'm actually vice chair of the board of the World Trade Center Association. And it's a wonderful board. We need more women, just a plug. And it's a board that allows us to see the big picture of what's going on around. So I really appreciate what the board is providing. And the connections, like Christina spoke about, the connections between business people from Winnipeg and from other regions, it's done naturally through our network. Another thing about myself, I often sit on different boards, but today I'm also on the board of the Bank of Canada, which is a pretty big deal because it's equal to the Federal Reserve Bank, if you have an idea. So we're 12 Canadians on this board, and I'm very happy and very, very thankful that I'm on that board. And you can imagine how much that connects me to the economy, what's going on here in the world. So that's an important one too. So the World Trade Center, that one, also on a foundation. It's the Canada West Foundation. It's a think tank of what's going on in the economy. So all these things help me to guide the group at the office. We happen to be many women at the office. I have wonderful staff, a lot of women-led departments. We're 23. We're open for business. And anything you want to know about the World Trade Center Winnipeg, we're available. And I'm very, very grateful to Denise, to Maureen, to Ree, for organizing this today, because we have something different. We're not better or worse. We're just different as women leaders. And I think it's important for us to provide the opportunity to speak on these things. So bravo and merci beaucoup. And thanks for being everybody that's part of this.
Thank you so much, Mariette. And, thank you for your leadership on behalf of the WTCA. I think that we all benefit from having you there. And certainly you are like the other women on this panel, a great example of fearless leadership. So thanks so much for that. I'm going to jump now to sunny Savannah. Jesse, I'm going to ask you to give us a little bit of background about the World Trade Center Savannah and yourself.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Maureen. So hello, bonjour, hola, ciao, hello to all of my friends and colleagues across the world and across all these different time zones. As Maureen said, I am coming at you from sunny Savannah, Georgia. We are on the southeast coast of the United States. I am part of World Trade Center Savannah, where our goal is to attract investment and create jobs. We do that by helping regional companies grow internationally and helping land international companies here in Savannah. So I serve the organization as our Director of Research and Trade Development. So our research drives some of our strategic planning for our team and also our partners. Additionally, I lead trade missions and host delegations when we are able to host them again. In my 4 years with the organization, I've actually had the honor to work with individuals from almost 40 countries. I am a recent graduate from the Washington International Diplomatic Academy. Out in the community, I'm involved in the League of Women Voters, the United Way of Coastal Georgia. I sit on the Community Council with Savannah Technical College. I'm also involved in Hospice Savannah in a volunteer capacity. Prior to joining World Trade Center Savannah, I have a very interesting, diverse background that could be its own, like, panel discussion because it's so strange. So I started off in education, I did some social services, some healthcare, and all of that kind of patchwork of experience brought me to World Trade Center Savannah. And a celebration, spoiler alert, this fall, World Trade Center Savannah will be celebrating our 10th anniversary. So stand by for more information about that in October.
That's great, Jesse. Thank you so much. And congratulations on the upcoming 10th anniversary. That's really exciting. And knowing you and the rest of the crew there, I'm sure there is going to be a big celebration around that. So
Really?
we look forward to following that. Thank you so much. And now we're going to go to Delaware. Our new president of the United States comes from Delaware. So certainly the World Trade Center Delaware has been getting much attention as a result of that. And Carla, I'd love for you to tell us about, the World Trade Center Delaware and give us some background about you.
Thank you so much, Maureen and Denise and Ree. It's a real pleasure to be here and really glad you organized this. And to my fellow panelists, Mariette, Christina, Jesse, this is a wonderful opportunity. As you mentioned, we are the home of President Biden. We're also the oldest state. Delaware, although very small, is the first state in the United States. And we are also the eastern gateway to the entire United States, and World Trade Center Delaware very definitely is the key. We are located in the Mid-Atlantic, and our biggest industry actually is agriculture. And the county of Sussex County actually produces more chickens, more poultry than any other county in the entire United States. Even our state bird is a blue hen, but that goes back to colonial times. We're also known as the incorporation capital of the world because of our legal system in Delaware, our Court of Chancery, which is unique. And from its name, you may gather it goes back hundreds of years. Delaware, however, is not living in the past. We are very, very much involved in fintech, and in the Mid-Atlantic region, 75% of all employees involved in fintech actually work in Delaware. In this region, our Port of Wilmington is doubling its capacity. It's the only port in the entire United States where the U.S. Department of Agriculture is actually located inside of the port. It's a very, very specialized port. Goods come in and out very, very quickly. There's only one stoplight from the Port of Wilmington to Canada, Chicago, or Florida. So it's very, very convenient, very agile, and you can be within 50 to 60% of the consuming North American public within 12 hours of arriving at the port. I should also mention that goods are not the only thing we do. The National Institute for Innovation in Manufacturing Biopharmaceuticals is located in Delaware, and this is attracting all kinds of high-tech biopharma, medical equipment companies. So although rooted with a root in the past, we are also very much in the future. My own background, I've always worked internationally. I started out as a geophysicist. I've worked on every continent with the exception of Antarctica. I worked in underground coal mines and then switched over to the environmental side. And I've really always worked at the intersection of engineering and public health. And I've been a member of the World Trade Center for many years in Delaware. It was founded in 1987 in Delaware, so we're one of the older ones. And I had in the past served on the board. However, I had not been, had never served in a leadership position. And I was finishing up a project in telemedicine overseas with NATO, and I was asked if I would consider taking over the reins of the World Trade Center. And I very much said yes, because this is such a trusted organization with wonderful, wonderful partners around the world. And it makes it very easy to do our jobs, knowing that we can rely on partners such as the other women on this panel. I only have to send an email or call, and I know there's assistance from any World Trade Center around the world that can help our members and our clients. So thank you all very much.
Well, thank you, Carla. And to the World Trade Center Dublin members in the audience, make sure you have Delaware on your radar. We're going to remind you. We're like the rest of the panelists, Carla, we're so lucky to have you as part of our network, and appreciate everything you do for the rest of us. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to turn it back over to Denise now. And Denise, maybe we'll ask another question of our panelists.
Yeah. Perfect. That sounds wonderful. I think I want to ask Carla this next question. How do you think being a World Trade Center has guided your business through the pandemic?
Well, as I mentioned, partnerships earlier, and the fact that there are World Trade Centers in over 300 locations in almost 100 countries with well over 15,000 employees. That means there is an expert in something around the world in one of the World Trade Centers. Like many World Trade Centers this year, many of our questions were related to COVID. As a World Trade Center, we're able to do both import and export assistance, also help in terms of financing through our partnerships with many of the international financial institutions. I think that we are able, because of the partnerships, because of who we are, able to be extremely quick, agile in helping these companies, many of whom had never imported or exported previously to COVID. Supply chain issues were a huge factor during the past year, and we were able to ease the way because of our partnerships. I think that the fact that we were trusted partners means that we were called on to a tremendous extent, much more so than many government agencies. We didn't have the specific red tape that many government agencies had. I was able to, in answer to a request from a company, not a member, but a company located in Delaware, able to arrange a meeting with another World Trade Center across the globe on getting PPE supplies within 24 hours on a weekend. And I think this just says something about the willingness of World Trade Centers to help each other. And that's something you don't find with every organization.
I think that's
advantage.
that's a beautiful illustration of how World Trade Centers work and how we collaborate consistently with one another and to help grow and expand business. I think that's just a fantastic illustration of that. The conversation you'd like to add, any other stories you'd like to tell us? Carla?
I didn't hear something cut out. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. There's a bad weather around me, so I apologize for that. I was just saying, was there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that the story of collaboration, I think, is probably the most important advantage that we as World Trade Centers can give to the public. And I should mention that World Trade Center Delaware does receive some funding from the state of Delaware. There was a law passed making us a contact on a representative contact on behalf of the state of Delaware. And so we as a World Trade Center decided to make all of our services related to COVID free of charge during this past year. And that's what we used all of our funding for. And I think that we were not the only World Trade Center to do that. We've shared stories with what we did with other World Trade Centers and found that many World Trade Centers, despite the uncertainty in terms of the economy, were willing to do this because we believe the sooner that we can contribute to a solution for COVID, the faster that the worldwide economy would recover. And we had a role in that as World Trade Centers in making sure that the world can recover.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate the stories. Thank you. That's wonderful illustration of World Trade Centers. I do have another question, and I'd like to direct this question to Christina. Christina, has the pandemic been a catalyst of change? Christina, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. The technology, we are not enough. We are not enough to work remotely, never. So, regarding your question, we may feel more creative when we are under gun, but it's just a feeling and not a reality. The pandemic has been first perceived as a war. Facing dangers, human behaviors try to transform them into changes and opportunities in order to overcome fear. How do I acted? So to skip the feeling of uncertainty and unpredictability, I gave myself objectives and goals. First one, to come out with new services for our members. I thought they were in troubles and looking to count on new solutions to remain connected and updated. We developed an app, MyNet, which was first used among our members, then enlarged to the European network of WTCs and their members, and hopefully within the end of the year will be used also at international level. Second goal, to acquire new knowledge of myself and my surroundings, which I was giving for granted. I'm sure that remote education involved not only students at school level, but also us. So I followed different courses to deep information on specific topics, both at professional level and also at personal one. And as it was not possible to plan a summer vacation in an exotic location, I never stopped to run and to climb the local mountains, where I discovered great places just near the corner. So take the best you can from what you have. Third goal, to capture financial supports and translate them into new projects. So during the pandemic time, there is a constant injection of financials at local, national, European levels. Therefore, when the cost of the money is very low or free, it's a very good idea to monitor constantly the financial sources, to apply and invest in new projects. And last but not least, of course, to help other people by listening to them, motivating them, and helping them in finding their ways to overcome the crisis.
That's wonderful. I like your goals, 1, 2, 3. That's really impactful. And I also like the fact that you took some time to visit nature. I want to add on a little bit to that question and ask you, if given a window to do a deeper dive on how this impacted you personally, and how has it opened doors for you as a woman or not?
Generally speaking, regarding the impact of the pandemic in Italy for women, the numbers are very negative. This is something that I would like to stress. So the social inequality has been amplified, especially after the second lockdown. In December 2020, the employment drop of 100,000 units, of which 99,000 were women. The combination of remote working, children at home is not easy to carry on if we add also economic crisis. So the fact is that they lost their jobs. But which are the possible scenarios for women in 2021 and 2022 that I personally see? So the healthcare sector, which is one of the most promising in terms of people aging. There is an increasing demand of new services with the prevalence of women involvement. 70% of the occupied are women. Sustainability, one of the most promising sectors to focus on is the green economy and circular economy related jobs. And third one, digitalization and human science combined. It means the combination of STEM competencies, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics with humanities skills, communication, observation, empathy, and logical thinking, where women are very familiar with.
That's very interesting. I think that the statistics that you gave about women in industry across the board is something that's been happening globally. So it's a tragic story, but it seems to be something that's trending globally. Would you all agree with that statement? Is that what's happening in your particular markets or parts of the world? Yeah. Yeah, that's sad but true. I'm going to go ahead and pass the next question to Maureen. Thank you, Christina and Carla, for your feedback.
Yes, thank you all. I'm going to pick up on your question, Denise, and ask Mariette and then Jesse their thoughts around, as women in international business, how have you handled male bias?
So I've been in international business for quite a while now, and at least 15, 16 years. And I'm seeing some changes, which is encouraging in the sense that I see more women involved at different levels, at higher levels, at executive levels. And I'm talking here international trade, but also, in the banking world and all that. So I'm encouraged by that. But I can certainly see that there's a difference in the way we approach our management style. Christina touched on it about the empathetic approach. So for me in international trade, I think one of the things I would say to any woman is it's okay to stay a woman. Sometimes women will try too much to act like a man, to take on the aptitudes of men that are more related to men. Again, this is, I don't want to sound stereotype, but it will sound stereotype just because. But I find sometimes that we try too hard to fit in the mold of the men's world. And I would say to any woman, don't. Like, you're a woman, that's okay. You can dress, you can wear heels, I don't care. You're a woman. You don't want to dress, don't want to wear heels, don't. But you are still different, and your approach will be different, and that's okay. Christina spoke about the empathy, and I think that also has to do with the communication style, the organizational style. I think we're a little bit more organized. Sometimes men will laugh at us as having all things in compartments in our brain. And I think there's some things to say about that, and I like that. Another thing I would say is, and I happen to have a woman that's in charge of our human resources at the office. So HR this year, if anybody I think would agree that the HR of all the departments has been the most shaken up, I think, in most organizations and most corporations, because it was always touching, everything was touching on the human and the person, the employee, the person out there, the client. And if you have a strong HR that understands what's affecting people, so it's the uncertainty, it might be mental health. I find that women will be maybe a little bit more connected to the importance of the holistic person. So the holistic person as a woman is often one who is also maybe a mother or taking care of elderly parents. As a mother, I know who organized the birthday parties, for example, of the kids. So it's normal for us to carry on a lot. And I think the reason I have a lot of women at my office is because the expression about, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. Women are often very, very busy, but guess what? They produce, and it's just a different style. So I'm hoping I'm answering your question, Maureen, as it relates to international trade. But I'm thinking the whole year, it was international trade, but it was also more about trading feelings and what was going on amongst people.
Yeah, very, very well said, Mariette. And, given the boards that you've shared with us that you sit on, certainly there's change happening, right? You can feel that. And I think your perspective around, being who you are, and being proud, to be a woman in business is really something that's important to keep in mind. I know when I started, in international business, there were very few meetings that I went to where there was another woman in the meeting with me, and I'm definitely seeing that change. Definitely seeing that change. So it's good news, and and I think the warmth and empathy that Christina mentioned and you echoed, Mariette, is something that I feel very proud of within my own organization. So thank you for your thoughts on that. And Jessie, I'd love to hear what you think.
Well, thank you, Maureen and Mariette. I'll echo so many of the things you said. But first, I want to start out by zooming away from the idea of male bias and gender bias for a minute. So I think it's interesting that gender bias is born from something totally benign, right? It's basic child development, the concept of duality. Yes is yes, no is no. Things are black and white, there is no gray. This is only a problem, though, when we don't mature into some clearer thinking, right? So we learn and we cling to those generalizations about appropriate roles for men and women. And the reality is, in terms of the workplace, men have the gender bias advantage. We have the wage gap. We have a disparity of men and women in leadership roles and so on. On the other hand, we know that companies with mixed gender leadership teams are often more successful. We've also seen countries with female leadership reacting more quickly to address COVID-19. Yes. So it's interesting when you look at the traits of men that are often rewarded, right? Being decisive and assertive. They're also those same traits that are going to spark some resentment if they're not delivered with thoughtfulness and gentleness, which are generally female traits. So something else is interesting to note, oversimplifying here, but you have the two hemispheres of your brain, right? You have the logic versus the feeling, kind of the art versus the science sides of your brain. So the two sides of your brain are connected by something called the corpus callosum. In the physically, genetically female body, that corpus callosum is bigger and thicker, which means that women's thinking patterns are often more dynamic and agile and can more easily switch between the two kind of thinking, feeling, planning, doing parts of our brains. So with that in mind, I mean, gender bias is something that's learned. I think that we can do better with each generation. I know that all the ladies in this panel are raising their children and their sons and their daughters to know better and do better. And I hope that I'm a leader in my community that's sending the same message. To Mariette's point, growth is painful, right? I think that men need to be more open-minded and allowing women into leadership roles. And I think alternatively, I think women need to, be brave and be like courageously authentic themselves and use the punctuation points that they like and send a smiley face. I don't know. Be yourself, 100% authentically yourself. You should never lay your head down at the end of the day and think I was not myself, regardless of whether or not that brings you success or otherwise. So in terms of my personal experience, I would say it's pretty typical. Sometimes I do wonder, where would I be if I was myself, but packaged in, a male shape? I don't know where I would be, maybe the exact same place. However, I would be remiss not to point out that I have been incredibly lucky to have some really wonderful and lovely male leaders in my life and mentors that have been so open-minded and just brought me along and did not think twice, regardless of my age or the way I appear or my gender. They just considered me part of the team from the beginning. I would say I'm very grateful to the World Trade Centers Association for introducing me to so many powerful women that I've been able to grow in my career right alongside. I think it's important also to note that, game recognizes game, right? If you are a powerful person, you are going to attract powerful people, I would like to think, regardless of gender. So yeah, I would just echo Mariette's sentiments completely. Just be courageously, authentically yourself. And when we know better, we can do better.
I loved what you said. I think that's absolutely amazing. So I'm going to direct this question to you, Jessie. We have a question that came up in the chat from Farik, one of our own World Trade Centers. And his question was, and I think you've kind of hit on it just a little bit, but I want you to expand it just a little bit more. The panelists indicate where their difference lies in the female approach to international trade compared to approach taken by men. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So I'll answer that question by telling a little bit of a story. So I was leading a trade mission, of course, when we were traveling, right? So it's been a couple of years. My role in this mission was, of course, to plan the meeting, bring all the brains to the table, make sure that we had an agenda, make sure that we had food on our plates and drink in our cups, and that we got our business completed. I will say that the people that came to this meeting were shocked that I, pulled up a chair and joined the conversation, because I think that the idea was I was there in more of an administrative role rather than a strategic partner type role. Mm-hmm. So that being said, I think that females approach it just like Mariette said. We have a plan, we have goals, and it goes back to that dynamic thinking pattern that we have, right? So we can both come to a meeting organized and prepared and have put together just a stellar menu, right? But we can also have ideas, right? We are here to add to the conversation. We're not here just to be ornamental. So I think that maybe if I were very carefully, gingerly stereotyping, which we do not endorse, right? But if I were going to make some sort of a broad statement, I would say that potentially men kind of parachute into the situation and just react in the moment rather than going in with a plan, perhaps. And I think that ladies tend to be a lot more thoughtful going into those sort of meetings. So Denise, I hope that answers, Firik, I hope that answers your question.
I think it does. I'm going to take liberties and ask Mariette. There's one more question in the chat, but I want to direct it to Mariette. And it's from actually one of the World Trade Center Arkansas members. And it's, we call her Hope, but the question is related to about male bias. How about the success of #MeToo? It was related to international business and trade.
I think that the #MeToo, like many other movements, are there because they need to be there. Mm-hmm. And I think it uncovered things that we all knew about. It was not a surprise, but you could not get away with it anymore. And that's the difference. And that's the difference with all kinds of movements that we've seen since the 1900s on all kinds of issues. So the Me Too, in my opinion, has just brought it right home. The Black Lives Matters, same thing. Here in Canada, a lot around the Aboriginal. So it's about diversity, equality, making sure that there's inclusion. So that movement was just part of, I think, many other movements, which it's about time. And so I think it just contributes. We're in a world here, like we're the World Trade Center. So the differences in our religions, our languages, our cultures, our mores, what we find acceptable around the world are different. But if we can go to the heart of we're just people, like that's the one thing we are. We're all human beings. And so at the end of the day, if we can concentrate on that, and yes, today we're talking about women because we still need to showcase what women bring, because it's not always obvious. But in general, we're human beings. And I think if we remember that part, the rest, imagine all the contributions and all the collaborations and all the partnerships we've been talking about that we can even have more of when we think in this way, in a planetary kind of way, which we are well positioned to do that. And we should be the example to do that as a World Trade Center Association.
Okay, Maureen, that was all the questions we had in the chat at the moment.
Okay, great. Well, fascinating answers. And I just feel, I know I'm lucky to be part of this network. But I tell you what, listening to the responses to these questions from these brilliant panelists is really inspiring to me, and so appreciated. So thank you for those answers. And now moving on to another member of the panel, Carla. You have so much to offer the organization, and you talked about, things that happened, around the pandemic with PPE and that type of thing. My question to you is, with everything that's gone on with the pandemic, roles have expanded. People have had to take on new responsibilities in response to what's been going on. Yet you've got to maintain the same level and commitment of work and do your kind of regular job, right? In addition to what else is going on and that you need to respond to. Can you share your thoughts as a woman leader on how you've balanced and maneuvered through these changes within your organization?
I think that using technology really, really helped. We expanded our use greatly, and we did more partnerships, far more partnerships than we had in the past, where we might invite a speaker from another World Trade Center, another region to come join us on a program. This time, we were able to use the technology and just open up the panels, open up the training, open up the expertise. And I think that really helped ease some of the workload. It just the use of the technology. Now, of course, it had glitches, and we're still working through it even a year later. But I think that embracing the use of technology helped all of us. Not being afraid to say, hey, don't know it. Can you help me? Can't figure this out. Anybody know the answer? I think as women, we're more likely to do that than some males I know. And I think that in some ways I'm lucky being trained as an engineer. I look at things in process. I started out in geophysics and ended up working in telemedicine. And it is all engineering, it is all process. And I think was very helpful to me individually. But I think that as technology becomes more and more important for assisting collaboration, we will all embrace more of it. I think where women are different is that we'll study different types of technology before jumping in and saying, this is the one we have to have. We'll spend a little more time experimenting, if you will, what works best in our particular situation, whether it's cultural, language, number of people we have to bring into the situation. So I think that technology is helping a great deal for collaboration and allowing us more balance. On the other hand, we just don't sleep as much.
Well, that is certainly true. And I've never had to wear my glasses as much as I do now. Carla, we have a question from the audience, which I think really is related to the question I just asked you. And the question is, what societal changes in work-life balance do you see will transpire from the pandemic?
I think we're going to see reaching out more. I really do. I think that we're going to go across the world far more easily than we ever did before, at least among World Trade Centers, where we might have stuck to our own region or people we knew because we already had relationships with, maybe because of our own background, maybe culture, educational, et cetera. But I think we're going to be far more open to reaching across the ocean, not just because the expertise may be there, but because the necessity of reaching across. If we have something that we're an expert in, and we can't all be experts in everything, we need to make that known so that we're not reinventing the wheel in every location. We have to be more open to share what we know. We can't hold it so tightly. I think that's going to be a huge change. Certainly, the development of the vaccines so quickly over the last year is an example of this. Yes, it has been, many of these vaccines have been in development for 20 years because we had experience with SARS over the years and MRSA and many of the other types of diseases, episodic diseases that have occurred. But I think that we have collaborated far more quickly over the past year. And that's been a very, very good lesson to everybody, no matter what field we're in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Those are, really great responses. And I concur. I think that, the pandemic has, forced, as you've said, new partnerships and, better, stronger, more open communication. I absolutely agree, with all of your points there. One thing that I would probably add and just be curious around thoughts, regarding this is, when I'm in the grocery store, the conversation around me, 6 feet apart, but around me, is often times people talking about how they've enjoyed the experience of being at home more, and how that's created a different balance in their lives. And there's almost not a time when I'm not in a public space like that where I don't, eavesdrop on that type of conversation. I'm wondering if all of you are experiencing the same thing.
Yeah, if I can pitch in, I think there's societal changes that are most likely going to happen. Working physically every day, 9 to 5 in the same place. And I think there's going to be a lot more hybrid approach to the office space. I'm hoping that the work balance as it relates to health, the yoga pants for Denise, the kind of being more concerned about our health, climbing mountains around Trieste.
Yes.
I think there's a trend. We see the green trend. We see the health trend. We see the less consumerism as it relates to things that might not be as important. A trend. How will that affect some of our businesses, good and bad? Where are the opportunities? I think opportunities are going to be in a little bit more the human relations. What I don't want to see happening is a fear of others. Because right now there's the mask, there's the distance, there's that fear of others, of the human being. being, because I'm all about that human being. I hope that is not something that will stay, because I can see children being brought up right now in this environment of stay away, that person might be sick, right? And I just hope that that is not a trend that will stay. I hope that the human being part will still be very close, and that we can have normal conversations and normal relations. But I do think things are going to happen, and I do think there's going to be, it's going to be gradual. So the changes will probably not be overnight, but they will be gradual. But I think there's great stuff like having a little bit more balance that should stay. I hope it will stay.
Thank you for that, Mariette. And Denise, I think we have just time enough for one more question from the audience.
Yes, we do. Thank you. The question is from Azu, and it's really directed to everyone. So I'm going to put Maureen on the spot, and I'm going to ask her to answer the question as well, because I know the answer for her. And I'll call on each of you to be able to respond. But how do you ladies pay it forward, mentoring with other women that are less experienced professionally? So Maureen, I know that you have a subject matter expert on this, so go ahead.
Well, I love helping people, and that's what I love about my job, is that every day I'm helping companies to mature and to grow. And I feel the same way about young professionals. I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, and sometimes made them over and over again until I finally learned. But for me, it's about passing that along. I think it is my obligation, as a leader to help, my team to grow and mature, and to teach them as much as I can, and to give them all the opportunities that are available to develop themselves professionally. Whether that's, and I do that, whether that's as part of my professional life or my personal life. I really believe that, giving back should be part of what we do as human beings.
Agreed. Well said. Mariette, your mic is open, so I'm going to call on you next.
Yeah, so I'm part of an initiative about taking young women and mentoring them officially. Non-officially, people that I work with will know that I always like to find what is the strength of somebody and find that, and trying to make it into an opportunity, an assistant into a director, a person that might not have had the other opportunities, but given the tools and the support and just the trust. I think, like Maureen says, it's an obligation as a leader to be able to give the tools necessary, and especially the confidence.
Great. Christina?
Yes, I fully agree with Maureen and with Mariette. And normally, young ladies comes to us, so they need you, and it's the same situation that I felt in the past with Charlotte Galloway. So when you identify a woman that is your mentor or is your leader, it's very easy, because they come to you and they listen to you, they explain their fears, so it's quite easy for us to help them. And then, of course, it's an obligation. So I'm very grateful to exchange my experience, and I'm also convinced that nobody is similar to the other. So what I have learned professionally, it's something that I express differently compared to any other person. So I have not to be jealous on my expertise, but as much as I can share it, it's going to be translated and combined from other people in new expertise.
Wonderful. Carla?
We have an internship program here at World Trade Center Delaware, as do many other World Trade Centers. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, we haven't been able to have these lovely people. Our last interns have all been from overseas. We do it through a program through the State Department. And this is something I think that every World Trade Center can participate in. Our internship programs, whether paid or unpaid, working with the local universities or exchange programs with universities across the globe. And it's a wonderful, wonderful way. And I always find I learn more from any intern or any young person than I can ever teach them. They are just so full of energy and life and ideas and a willingness to try anything. So it's just delightful. I highly recommend it.
Wonderful. Jessie, last but not least for this question.
Excellent. Thank you, Denise. And I would say that I would not be where I am today in a macro sense and a very micro sense, even physically, where I am in this moment, sitting in this library talking to you all, if it had not been for people that are further along in their career reaching back to bring me with them. So this is a great question because I can share a perspective as someone who's benefited from it and how I'm trying to build that into the next generation. So like Carla and World Trade Center Delaware, World Trade Center Savannah also has an internship program. I have been lucky enough to have some just next level stellar interns over the last several years, some of which then, grow into friends that I keep in touch with now. Additionally, I have just a group of girlfriends that, typically when the world is open, we can see each other maybe once a month or so. And that's just a really magical and special thing that I'm really lucky to get to do in Savannah, is meet so many wonderful young professional ladies and connect them, because we all have such interesting and unique strengths. So matching people up and just making sure they can build their ideas on top of one another and connect from like a programmatic perspective as well. So it's a joy to be part of that kind of mentoring machine in a couple different ways.
Great. That's really good. It's nice to see that each one of you have your own perspective, but yet recognize the value of mentoring and helping people move forward. I'm going to take the liberty and squeeze in one more question. I know we're right at the edge of time here, but I'd like to end the questioning portion of this conversation with, to each of you once again, the final question really is around, kind of a fun question. If you could host a talk show, who would be your first guest and why? Any takers on who wants to go first on that one?
Well, I love Betty White, and I'd love to interview her.
I love that.
For those who don't know Betty White, she's going to be 100 next January. She doesn't take herself seriously, but takes things seriously. She said something in the magazine once, which really reminds me of these times right now. So during World War II, she had to put her career on the line. So she had to stop. And she says it was a strange time and out of balance with everything. And so she survived. And it really reminds me of this. It's out of balance with everything. But see how things change. So this is my hope, Betty White.
Wonderful. I love that. All right, Christina?
Oh, first of all, I love the idea to host a talk show, of course, in Trieste. And my first guest, okay, it will be the King of Bhutan. Why? Why? Because in his country, the gross national happiness index is more important than the gross domestic product. And under the law, Bhutanese women enjoy considerable freedom and are considered equal to men. So there is no discrimination on basis of the gender. So I would really love to listen successfully histories from the King of Bhutan in Trieste, one of the happiest countries of the world.
I love that. That is amazing. I didn't know anything that you just said about this country. So this is fantastic. So maybe Maureen could get him on one of these and we could all ask him a few questions about that. That would be kind of fun. All right. Jessie, I'll go to you next.
Ooh, so my first guest, I have a whole list of people that I would love to talk to and bend their ear for a while, but to kick it off, I would love to interview Jill Ellis, the U.S. Women's National Team coach that took the U.S. Women's National Soccer Team to 2 back-to-back World Cup titles.
Okay. All right. Carla?
I would love to speak with Angela Merkel, because she has seen so much and has been a leader in so many different ways. She came from Eastern Germany before the changes. She lived through them. She lived through the wall, and she became leader of the unified Germany. And as was said earlier, that the countries that were led by women during this pandemic have been the most successful. And I think that she has done an incredible job being a leader, not just in Germany, but Europe and for women around the world. And the other aspect is I'd be very interested in her opinion on what guides her in terms of migration. I think she would have a very unique position on migration and also the role of women as they come into a new society from one unlike the new society. I would love to talk to her about that.
That's wonderful. I think that's really interesting how all of you have very different perspective and different people, but each person is very insightful. I'm going to take a liberty and tell you who my persons would be, because I think it would surprise each of you. And I would want to do them together. And when I say their names, you'll know why. I would love to have my first host or guest to be Cher and Elton John. And the reason is because I think the philosophy that they have about life and living is amazing. I mean, they're both open, they're very free, they're truly who they are, extremely ambitious, extremely hardworking, but their philanthropy and the things that they've done for humanity and for the world, I think really are going unrecognized. But I think together, it would be, first of all, first and foremost, hilarious, because neither of them know how to say a sentence without a bad word in it. But also, I just think it would just be something that would be very interesting to listen to. So I'll pass it back over to Maureen for our closing.
Well, thank you all so much. And I'm so glad you asked this last question, Denise, because it really is fun and fascinating. There are just so many people in this world that we can each gain inspiration from. And I gain a lot of my inspiration every day from the people here today speaking and on this panel. So I want to thank you all for being part of this. Lucky to be part of this association and to have such fearless, brilliant women to work with. I want to let the audience know we've gone a little bit over time, and my apologies for that. But I think we could go on for another 2 hours. But we're gonna finish off here so we can all get back to our all that needs to be done, our to-do lists. But I want to remind everyone that everyone that has participated today will receive a recording of this session. Along with that recording, we're going to include also some questions that we just didn't have a chance to get to, and some responses to those. So I apologize to those of you that had a question that we didn't get to, but we will be forwarding circulating an answer to those questions to everyone in the group. We're hoping, this group of people, this group of women, we're all hoping that this becomes a regular occurrence, that we're able to mature what we've done today into a real initiative within the association. And certainly appreciate everyone that joined us today, and any feedback that you have for us, please do send it along. Take good care. I wish you all prosperity and peace. Take care.